All righty, and welcome to City Business. This is James Moore. You are listening to solar-powered KRUU-FM on a beautiful sunny day. Well, maybe a little humid. I guess we've kind of gotten summer actually here. I still remember the Elephant Revival and the folks coming from Colorado for Fairfest. They said, "Oh, it's so hot and muggy here. It was like 80 degrees." I said, "You guys don't know the half of it." But at any rate, this is James Moore. We welcome Michael Halley to the airwaves to talk about what's the latest haps in City Hall. And we come to you after each City Council meeting the next day, lunchtime, 12:30, the following Thursday, dinner time, 6:30 p.m., and then the following Monday morning, 6:30 a.m. to get you caught up to what's going on. And how are you, Michael?
Good. Glad to be here.
Good to see you. Very colorful shirt for our radio listeners.
Yep. I figured it would translate well to audio.
It's nice. So what's happening in the city, Dom?
Actually, a lot of cool things.
And I mean DOM.
Yes, I got that.
Yeah.
All right. This is a review of our regular City Council meeting from July 13th, 2015. Last year, our water department superintendent, Carl Chandler, stepped down after a long time on the job.
More than 2 years?
Many more than 2 years.
A couple
like
decades?
20-something, yeah, a couple decades.
Cool.
He'd been on the job. I think he started, obviously not as the superintendent, but kind of worked his way up. So applications were taken and interviews done and ended up promoting from within, which in a lot of cases is very advantageous because who knows a department better than someone who previously worked there. So we promoted Steve Redinger, and he is our new water department superintendent. So it's good to get that position officially filled. He was the interim. So again, natural fit. He was
obviously doing the job.
Yeah. So that was done as part of our consent agenda. But I just wanted to give special attention on that one just because we only have 7 department heads, and so it's good to acknowledge them as individuals because they take a lot of responsibility.
Well, you know, while you're on that subject, what are the 7 departments?
All right, there's the water department.
Water?
They purify the water from the well and deliver it to your house. Wastewater takes your dirty, used water and cleans it up. So those 2 separate ones.
Right.
Fire and police, public protection.
Separate ones.
Yep. Public works includes mostly streets.
Okay.
The street paving, and that's the brush pickup and some of those other services. And then there's library and rec department are both in the non-essential service category.
But they're separate categories?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the 7.
That's the 7.
Great.
And you don't really count the city administrator as a department head, but City Hall is kind of its own department. You'd call that more the bureaucracy, for lack of a better term. But
the administration.
So that's a part of the puzzle. So those are them. So it's glad to have a full deck of department heads.
How long has it been since that? When did he step down?
Would have been end of the year 2014.
Oh, okay, so it's not that
half
long.
a year.
And obviously Steve's been in the interim position anyway, so it's not like there's been a gap.
But to have the person official, yes, captain sign off. All right, we had one public appearance, and it was from the owner of the property. I don't know the address, so I'm going to describe where it is. It's on South Main, across the alley from the Revelations building. It houses the TM Welcome Center and a couple other shops there.
Gotcha.
And there had been this bike rack in front of it for years. And the owner asked, can I get this moved so I can put up my scaffolding because I'm painting the front of my building? So yeah, the bike rack was moved, and she's just saying, I'd kind of prefer if it wasn't moved back after I'm done. And she did bring up a good point. These were made locally from scrap iron, so that was really great. It was very green. But the gaps between the bars are wider than your standard tire. And so when you try to put your bike in it, it ends up flopping around and falling over a lot of times. So
I always wondered about that.
Yeah, so maybe they need to go back to the manufacturer for some tweaking. And then I think a good home for them would be maybe in the grass lawn by the convention center. There's a little bit more space. Because when you take up part of the sidewalk, we want to encourage outdoor dining. We want to encourage pedestrian use. And so if you
they're gorgeous looking, but they almost look more like sculpture than their function.
Yep, their function. And they were made from old trestle, the metal from an old railroad bridge.
Cool.
The main parts. And then, but,
how many are there? Do you know offhand?
I think there are just those two, and they were both on Main. One's right next to the entrance to Cafe Paradiso.
Right.
That one's been there. And this one was across the street, a little further
But I've
down.
seen aren't there others around town?
That exact make?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Oh, maybe not.
I can't remember. They were made years ago. I can't remember if it was for an event or I don't think it was for RAGBRAI, but they needed homes, and so they were put there. And as with anything, you can try something for a while, like 4 or 5 years, and decide maybe we should move it.
Well, by the way, speaking of painting of that building, she's really done quite a fancy job there.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, kind of almost in that old style of, the big Victorian houses. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's different than that, but it has that multicolor.
Yeah, she's going for multicolor. Mm-hmm. I like it when people paint their buildings. I think the America's Diamond building is getting some paint.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? The chiropractor, too, there on Broadway just painted his building. And by the way, I'm hoping our building will take a hint.
Let's get a crew together.
We're going for the kind of flaky paint look, but I think it's getting a little old.
Yeah. Well,
actually, gutters would help. That's part of the reason out front, and that's just to bring all those together in a single package. When right now we're upgrading the server too. It's the first time in 9 years, so the website's been not down. It's still people are listening abroad, but just that's something that our crack eye team's working on. And you never think about those things till it takes a few days extra to get something done. How easy and smooth things go most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, so what else you got on your docket?
Well, this could be big news.
Okay.
I got to be talking all sort of qualifiers on this. But
ladies and gentlemen,
here we go.
Not a drum roll, please.
Yeah, right. So, as most people are well aware, we've got about $27 million wastewater phase 1, phase 2 improvement project coming up.
Right.
And while we can get loans to help at this point, we haven't found any grants, meaning, again, some people don't like grants because it's basically taxpayer money being siphoned and then distributed back in a certain way.
Well, the other thing about grants is they often have a certain thing built into them as long as it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Then they work. If not, you end up kind of doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that get this.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes.
Well, yeah, it reminds me of a grant I had worked on when I first got into council, and I was talking with our city administrator about this. Federal grants have federal requirements, and there are things called prevailing wage, Davis-Bacon Act, that said anyone you pay to do electrical work, plumbing, whatever, digging, you have to give them prevailing wage, which is a national average. So in somewhere like rural Iowa, where those wages tend to be lower, it's much higher than you would normally pay for the same work. Buy America Act is another one, and sometimes that's easy, and other times it's a lot more expensive to buy America.
Certain taxpayers would like that very much.
Yeah, so
the ones who get the job.
So these federal requirements, in some cases, can make the whole project cost more, and depending how much you got, what percentage of it was paid for by the grant, you may have an even wash, or
end up paying
more. So we're looking at all this, but
it's just a thing. I mean, if you're not working in the world of grants, I know the Beatbox did that for $12.15 a month for many years, and they're a lot of work, and you just want to find things that fit really well. And there's these things built in too that you have to spend them in this much time or that time. So if you don't know that from the outside, all of a sudden it seems like you got all that, you don't need this, you're done with that. My brother, who is a Christian in Guatemala for 8 years, got a grant for someone to help them, and he even counseled me early on that you get used to a position. If it's not sustainable, you're almost back a little further when you start over again, because now you don't have that. So it's like just something to factor in.
You must do your research.
It sounds like you're doing that.
Well, we got a call from the USDA office saying we have grant funds available that could be a good fit. The reason they weren't available before was our most recent census that our median wage is lower than it was before, and it now is within a certain threshold where this grant can be used for this.
Wow.
Now here's the qualifier. The grant is from, let's just say it this way, 0% of our project up to, at the very most, wishful thinking, pie in the sky, 75%. So don't take the 75% and run around and wave a flag in the air. We're going to get 75% or paid for by a grant. We wish. If that happened, that would be amazing. But it could be zero. So,
but just for 20% would be $5 million of a $25 million project.
Exactly.
So just
any percent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, there are little things that make it cost a little more. So we have to do, we have to postpone phase one. We were ready to start. We're going to postpone it for a few months while we do more environmental studies. Again, the federal requirements are more strict than state. And that could cost up to $100,000 to $125,000 to do those. So we're spending more just to make ourselves eligible for a grant we might get.
Yeah.
But yes, it is a roll of the dice. If you get a dice roll sound effect, that would be great. But at the same time, the fact they came to us, the fact they have funds available, the fact that we fit the criteria,
right.
it
Those
looks
are good signs. Yeah.
That we could get something.
Yeah.
And something would be a lot more than 100,000. You know, we'd probably talking millions.
Mm-hmm.
And if we got something, anything we get takes off from what the users, all of us who live in town and pay wastewater, are going to pay. Mm-hmm. Because as this unfolds, if we did not get any grants, we'll see a major increase over the years in what we're paying for our wastewater fee. So because this is an option and a good possibility, it looks promising, we felt that we have to investigate. Because like I said, if we could get something, that's less that we would be putting as a burden on all the users. So it's both exciting, but you can't get excited because then you could just get let down.
It's the tantric way. Sorry, Apocalypse Tantric Boys Choir. But seriously, that's those are good. Those are good odds, and it's a good sign when this is not just taking a flat out chance with this dialogue already. It seems to make sense, and I mean it is obviously a big package that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's thanks for sharing the sort of the inside story of how this works. I mean, it's not an inside story; it's transparent. This is what you're talking about, but it's kind of fascinating how these things work. And the thing about grants, you don't have to pay them back. I mean, that's the plus side.
That is a plus side.
Loans, those end up bonds, and I know the city's had some issues with some of that overextending or whatever.
Yeah, borrowing, and for this project, the borrowing is tied to a revenue source, but that revenue source are user fees, and so
which means taxes.
Which means it's a user fee, so it's what you pay for your utility bill.
Right.
So it's like as if Alliant
not a tax, a fee, literally.
Fee, yep. So we're having a public hearing on our next council meeting, July 27th, 7:00, City Hall.
Cool.
To then officially move forward with this, but it appears to be the direction. And
again, these are USDA, so that's federal funds.
Yep.
So, wow, great.
Yep.
By the way, you're listening to City Business with Michael Halley, 4th Council Ward City Councilman. I'm James Moore here at KRUU-FM. Jason Strong in the house with FMC. We appreciate them dropping by. Someone just said yesterday, "Oh, you're the guy on that show." I said, "You've seen me?" "Oh, that show." So that's this one. So back to City Business, and we bring it to you after each council meeting, Tuesday, Thursday, and the following Monday.
All right. So
what
we
else
have
you got, Michael?
A water project going on Monroe, Van Buren, and Cromwell. Just some water replacement. So if anyone lives over there and wonder what's going on, that'll happen soon.
Like pipes and...
Yeah, and it'll go under the road rather than ripping the road. They're gonna bore under it. And then 3rd Street, that little portion that we talked about before, from Iowa down to Monroe, I believe. It's a couple blocks, is going to be the remainder of the street that wasn't torn out when they replaced the wastewater line will be taken out and newly repaved. So anyone who enjoys skateboarding, no, I shouldn't say that because I don't think we're supposed to skateboard in the street, but when Low was paved, I remember going over there, and it's a nice, smooth street.
For 10 minutes?
For anybody on roller skates or anything, it's a dream. So
that's nice.
I didn't say that, but I did. All right. What else are we doing here? Oh, this is the annexation. I think I talked about this. FEDA, Fairfield Economic Development Association, purchased some land on 227th. So that's the street. If you're going south on Highway 1, the first street past the bypass, if you go under the bypass, it's called 227th.
Gotcha.
Now, the northern half of that street is within city limits and the southern half is county. So when we paved a portion that leads to American Hotel,
Right.
it was kind of a split between the city and county. We're looking at doing that again on the east side.
Okay. How far down?
Down to this new piece of property. So there's a straightaway, and then there's a turn.
Right. And there's that building, some kind of
DOT.
business. That's DOT, of course.
DOT's out there.
Mhm.
And then there's a lot to the left, to the west and to the east that are both ripe for some development. But to pave it would make it even riper. So that was currently, that side of the road was outside of city limits. A little portion was, but this land that's east of the DOT is now voluntarily annexed, so was county, now a city, and then rezoned. We have 2 more readings to make it official, but when a property is annexed, it immediately goes to R1 status, residential, the most basic status of anything, which means it can only have one single family unit. We're rezoning it to M2, which is general manufacturing. So that's what they're kind of looking to use it for. And it makes sense. It would be between the DOT building and the wastewater plant. So not a great place, I think, for homes, but could be an excellent place for...
Unless you're kind of the industrial type.
Yeah, maybe, that's your thing.
Gray, cement,
Yep. So
chicken
then
wire.
we also annexed the property on Libertyville Road, owned by, I forget her first name, Huffman. And she wants to develop properties, multifamily properties.
Huh.
So this is, I think it's slightly west of the hospital.
Okay, does that mean like apartments? Or does that mean...
She wanted us to rezone it from R1 to R3, multifamily residence. So
Oh, no, not...
Could be
Okay.
condos, could be triplexes, duplexes.
Well,
whatever.
there is a need, right?
Yeah, there is. And so, again, it wasn't in city limits. We annexed it voluntarily, and then we're changing the zoning. So 2 more readings to get the zoning officially changed. All right, the last reading for the amended permitted burn times went through. No fanfare, no fuss at all.
So it's going to this new...
So starting in October, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday are the days you're permitted to burn your yard waste. So Wednesdays, no longer. So hopefully people who want to get out and enjoy some fresh air don't have to wait
Some
3 days.
burn-free fresh air. Our good friends up in Victoria and Vancouver experiencing some awful...
Oh, yeah, the forest fires?
Yeah, bad news. And, well,
Yeah.
I mean, we saw our own, not only there, but all across Canada with our own moon,
Yeah,
red.
the moon turning red and the sun.
Some
the
people
next
looking
morning.
at the sun, yeah.
I remember.
Crazy.
I didn't know what that was caused by. I thought it was the end of days. All right, enough end of days jokes. Committee report.
Here's my last joke on the end times. Ready?
I got.
No, that's all I got. I got nothing.
Oh, it kind of works.
The last joke.
That's it. Nothing
Anyway.
left. All right, property committee met. You know what? They actually didn't have anything pressing. They
But which group was it? Which
property committee.
Property, okay.
I remember the report. but
And their purview is what?
everything from, we did this little sale of a parcel of city land because a gentleman had unknowingly built his addition on the back of his house into a city lot. So we then decided to sell him just that little portion to make that legal so then he could sell the property. So things is on that level. And another thing they dealt with was somebody didn't like their neighbor's trees.
I thought you were going to say didn't like their neighbor.
So,
Hello.
There's that, that's another thing. They also deal with
So anything to do with property.
yeah. And then the sale, I didn't mention this, the sale of the property at, what's the name? What's the number? It's out on 20, I guess it's not on here this time. We're talking about selling that property that was donated to the city years back and then housed the electronic recycling company. Now, there was an agreement that they were not just supposed to house it, but to renovate it, to add a certain number of jobs. And that was their lease agreement. They got the place for next to nothing. They didn't do those things. So then it was MRC. They then moved out. City has no need for the building, so we put it back on the market. Somebody's interested. I think the only hang up is that the price they're willing to pay is so much lower than the appraised value. The appraised value came in it was oddly high for that building. So the city is not allowed to gift things to people. So if there is a huge difference between what they're paying.
How were they doing it before, though?
It was the way we'll do this one as well, is an agreement where it's a kind of an economic development agreement.
Gotcha.
Where it says, okay, we'll sell the building at this price as long as you fix some old issues, add this number of jobs or something, so that there's an agreement in place of why we would be giving it to them for maybe a third of the appraised value.
So in other words, a similar kind of deal.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And what do they do? Have they said what they're doing?
Not yet. Still. Anytime with real estate, you have to wait till it's ready to announce.
Mum's the word.
There you go. Let's see. The water and sewer utilities met, and they basically mainly talked about this USDA grant. And as a committee, do we recommend to council to move forward on this or not? And everyone felt like the potential
the upside
savings was just, you couldn't say no, and it's worth it. So they brought that earlier in the meeting. Ways and Means Committee met. They're the ones who deal with dollars and cents. They said the city's financial policy is basically complete. They're looking for input from the rest of the council and department heads. And I really like that they're including department heads, because instead of having something that's kind of handed down to them, okay, comply with this. It's like during the planning stage, take a look at this. Does this make sense? Do you think this is good? Do you think this, getting that feedback.
More of a consensus model.
Exactly. So the idea is simply, as we're doing in other ways, just shoring up the finances and making sure that expenditures are tracked and everything is as transparent as possible. I'm not saying it wasn't in the past, but there's always room for improvement.
There has been an issue. I mean, the Moody rating is down to B3, which is still in the recommended range, but just at the bottom rung of it.
Yep.
And I was thinking, well, these other towns must be the same, but not so. Ottumwa and Mount Pleasant, both with A1. So for whatever reason, that's another discussion where all that comes from, but for whatever reason, obviously these things are important.
Yep.
And getting, what do you call it, the fiscal ship?
Yep.
In shape or something, again, there's some of it's, I think, the history from the water, the sewage issues.
Yeah, there's several things, but there's I wouldn't say that the ship is off course, but can be put in a way that it's not just pleasing Moody's. Yeah. It's that the points they're making are good, which is, it is not ideal for a city government to function without cash reserves and every fund balance in the positive. We have been functioning without either of those for too long.
Gotcha.
And it kept going. And so
it's a number of things.
Yeah, every time they checked, they're like, well, you're still there. So one thing that probably would have, I think, kept us where we were, instead of that little mini downgrade we got, would have been if we had sold Logan and used those funds the way we said, got rid of some old debt, put some in the general fund, which is what happened, but it happened after that.
Gotcha.
And so that would have helped. So that's done now. But just to jump ahead a little bit,
sure.
In November, we most likely will be looking at a referendum to reallocate the lost funds. Now, historically, we've been spending 25% of those funds on wastewater. We had another thing that they discussed at the wastewater committee was, are those funds part of the McClure Engineering rate study they did, that we were supposed to raise rates once every year or so, a little bit, and that stays ahead of all the borrowing for all the projects? And the answer was no. That 25% was not included in that. So it's really not needed. Using local option sales tax for something like wastewater, philosophically, is a little odd. You want to use local option sales tax ideally for anything that makes the community better, more attractive, or to give property tax, or not property tax, but give some sort of tax relief. So if we could get that 25%, we could potentially see the emergency levy come off the property taxes, so people get the property tax will go down a little bit. We could then use some of those funds to shore up some of these fund balances, and hopefully have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of community betterment, in terms of supporting our local nonprofits and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of positives, but to get the language right,
that'll be a big deal. Yeah,
it's tricky because
who's working on that?
City administrator and then Ways and Means will get it ready
through the committee and then present it.
Yeah, and it needs to be.
Of course, they'll be public,
but it has to be put on the ballot months in advance to be ready for the November ballot. So we'll get it worked out. But the difference between saying property tax relief and community betterment, whatever you say, you're locked into. Now the county uses most of their lost funds for what they call property tax relief. So more on that later, but it's another step in this direction.
Right. Well, heads up on the downward dog coming down the pike.
All right. The Public Safety Transportation Committee also met, and we're still working on that training, alcohol serving training requirement.
Okay.
We found an online version that is not only free, but the state allows anyone who is current, where all their employees have taken it, that if they get caught serving to someone over 18 but under 21, not a minor but not someone of age, they get one get out of jail free card. They get one no fine pass because they completed the specific online training. So it's a little bit of an incentive. We asked about what's the incentive. Well, if they do it and they get, for whatever reason,
and that wouldn't apply for minor underneath that.
No, if you get under 18, it's it's a whole different story. But so we're still working on it. We'll have something probably in the next month or so to talk about specifically. But it's
very cool. Well, we just about out of time here. Any final thoughts there, sir?
Just glad that the 4th of July was sunny.
Yes,
and those fireworks were quite fun to watch. And so, yeah, happy birthday, America.
They went off beautifully, and it was a lovely night, and you could barely wend your way through the
it was a pretty big crowd
through the traffic. Yeah. So well done.
Thanks to the fire chief and the fire department for launching the fireworks. Thanks to the police chief for helping park cars and all the other volunteers.
And thank you, America, for being born.
There you go.
We'll be back next time right here on City Business. Stay cool.